Now, can we turn to 2 Samuel chapter 6, where we've been working along with this. And remember that I began with Obed-Edom elements. Then I went to the place called sustaining the presence of God. How many of you remember that? Okay, now, again that I'm going to continue with the title again, sustaining the presence of God. Okay, now can we read that? 2 Samuel chapter 6, verse 11.
And the ark of the Lord remained in the house of Obed-Edom, the Gittite, for 3 months. And the Lord blessed Obed-Edom and all his household.
Now, remember that we saw a duration or period where the presence becomes so tangible, cover the entire person called Obed-Edom, and not only that, his entire household. That's what we saw in that. And because of that, what happens? God blessed what? Obed-Edom and his entire family. Do you saw that? And that's where we began with, and we are talking about the blood. Remember, we talk about how the blood helps us to sustain the presence of God. How many of you remember that? And today we want to look at one more element which can help us to sustain and saturate the presence of God. Okay, now? Are you with me? So what I'm going to do is now, we are going to look into the ark. How many of you know that within the ark inside there are 3 items? Do you know that? Where God told Moses to place that within the ark. How many of you remember that? Do you remember? Number 1, 10 commandments. Number 2, manna. Number 3, Aaron rod. Now, listen, this was placed inside what? The what? The ark. Now, the 3 items itself is an expression of Jesus Christ. We can actually develop that. The 10 commandments itself is to speak about a king that giving law. We can see the kingly expressed in the commandment. And when we see the manna, we can see Jesus as the what? The bread of life. Where he's in John chapter 6, where he became the bread of life. And he says, man should not live by bread alone, every word that proceeds out of that. What he's talking about? Heavenly bread that you and I are supposed to eat. Who is the heavenly bread? Is Jesus himself. And the rod itself signifies an expression of Jesus as a high priest. So the 3 items that was placed in the ark is placed inside Jesus. There is a kingly express in Jesus. Are you with me? That he can be a provider that can give you the word of God and the bread. And not only that, he was a what? High priest. These are the element that is inside. That's why they was placed in the what? In the ark. I couldn't go in the details of the ark, but just give you a glimpse of what is that. So the ark itself, Jesus, within him there was what? 3 dimensions of expressions which was placed inside him. So whatever placed inside him was commanded by God. When God commanded, he's not asking them to do it. Just there's no space. So in order to put the ark and inside the 10 commandments and the manna, there's no space, so we want to put it inside. That's not reason. The reason behind is there's a significance behind that. That's an expression of Jesus supposed to be revealed in his life. If that is true, then you and I are the ark. How many of you know that? In the New Testament, you and I are the ark. If the New Testament says that you and I are the ark, what are you supposed to be? That be a kingly expression supposed to be in your life. That means not only that, you also what? Not a high priest, you're a priest. You come from the line of the priest. How many of you understood that? Not only that, the manna, what is that? Where you can what? Supply others the resources of God. Are you with me? How many of you understood what I'm saying? This is what actually all about. So now, I'm going to take out 1 items, then we're going to build up some principles here, so that we will understood that this principle will help us what? Navigate us what? Sustaining the presence of God and saturate the presence of God. Are you with me? Are you with me? Are you following what I'm saying? Okay, now, in order to understand this, then we have to go into where did the rod actually spoken about. Okay, we can go to Numbers chapter 17. Okay, we're going to work through Numbers chapter 17. Then from there, we will extract some principles that will allow us to what? Navigate to sustain the presence of God. Are you with me? How many of you following what I'm saying? Do you get what I'm saying? Hello? Okay, now, can we read that? So that maybe we'll read until verse 8, then after that we will work along with this. Why, Grace? Are you smiling?
Start.
Okay.
And the Lord said to Moses, "Speak to the Israelites and get from them rods or staffs, one for each father's house, from all their leaders according to their father's houses, 12 rods. Write every man's name on his rod, and you shall write Aaron's name on the rod of Levi, for there shall be one rod for the head of each father's house. You shall lay them up in the tent of meeting before the testimony where I meet with you. And the rod of the man whom I choose shall bud, and I will make to cease from me the murmurings of the Israelites, which they murmur against you." And Moses spoke to the Israelites, and every one of their leaders gave him a rod or a staff, one for each leader according to their father's house, 12 rods, and the rod of Aaron was among their rods. And Moses deposited the rods before the Lord in the tent of the testimony. And the next day Moses went into the tent of testimony, and behold, the rod of Aaron for the house of Levi had sprouted and brought forth buds and produced blossoms and yielded almonds.
Okay, now, if you want to interpret this passage, then you have to look at chapter 16. What was chapter 16 happening? There was Korah and two other people was against the leadership of Moses and Aaron. That's what chapter 16 all about. They was murmuring him. And that's where Aaron's supposed to be placed as a high priest. They was not validating his call, his leadership. And that's where the murmur was going on. And if you read chapter 16, what happened? 250 people was what? Earth opened up and swallowed that. In the midst of the rebellions, God wants to validate what? The call of Aaron. Are you understand? That's what Numbers chapter 17 is all about. Okay? Now, I'm going to take this passage in another dimension so that we can actually look into what this morning we are about to see. Are you with me? How many of you understood what I'm saying? So now, let me give you a statement here. So what are we seeing in Numbers chapter 17? We're seeing a movement of deadness and barrenness into a bountiful positions. How many of you can see that? Are you seeing that? There's a deadness in the rod. The rod itself is a branch. How many of you know the rod was made up of the branch? It's a dead one. It's a barrenness one. There's no life. But when the life came back to the rod, is basically the sustainer of the presence of God that produced what? Bountiful and abundant. Are you with me? How many of you are noticing this? So what are we seeing here? So the sustaining of the presence of God can allow you to what? Remove the deadness in your life. It can be deadness in any sphere of your life or any barrenness in your sphere of life. When you learn to sustain in the presence of God, what happened? It brings bountifuls and abundant. And that's what we see. Remember, there was place in the tents of the meeting, the testimony, where the ark is. It was placed one day, the next day what? It became what? Fruitful. So what are we learning here? So when you learn to sustain the presence in your life and allow the presence to saturate in your life, barrenness will be removed in your life. Let this word go into your heart. Deadness will be removed in your life. And what is going to, it will migrate you to a place called bountiful and abundant. And you understand? And that's what God does. But if you learn to sustain, saturate the presence of God. Are you with me? Are you with me? How many of you getting what I'm saying? Are you clear with what I'm saying? So this truth must be saturated in your heart. In order for me to become a bountiful, in order for me to become increase in my life, then I need to be what? Sustained and saturated by the presence of God. And that's what I see here. So based on this, I'm going to draw some thoughts. Okay? Now, in order for me to sustain the presence, first of all, I must learn alignment. What I mean by alignment, positioning myself in the presence of God. You understand the statement here? So in order for me to sustain the presence, allow the presence remain in me, become so real, so saturated, in order that to happen, then alignment is necessary here. What I mean by alignment, positioning myself in the presence of God. Where do you get, Pastor? Let me show you that. You read entire verse 1 to verse 4. What is happening here? God called up the what? The tribe, the leader of the tribes. And each of them bring what? The rod. And they are supposed to what? Write it down. Do you saw the word write it down? You see that? Can you read that? Maybe verse 2, verse 1. Okay, I'll read for you. From all the leaders according to your father's household, you shall write each name in the rods. Do you saw that? Each name in the rod. So what are we seeing here? The word write means inscribe, grave. So what are we seeing here? That means there is something that is written in their life. So what is that? Write their names. So what is name is all about? Name is your identity. Name is your functionality. Name who you are. Are you with me? How many of you getting what I'm saying? So what are we saying here? Basically, I come to understand that in order for me to sustain, saturate the presence of God, then I must learn to know who am I. You understand? You see, remember that in Hebrew context, whenever they name the child, they have a significant purpose behind, because the name carry the destiny of the child, name carry the nature of the child, name carry the functionality of the child. That's why the Hebrew does. But in our context, in our culture, we name the child because we like the name. That's why we name the child. But there, they have a prophetic elements behind the name. Are you with me? So what are we seeing here? In order for me to sustain the presence of God, then I need to know who am I and what is I'm designed for, and what I am and what is my makeup of myself. Why? That will allow me to what? To navigate and facilitate what? Sustaining the presence of God. How many of you follow me while I'm saying? Are you with me? Do you remember the book of Isaiah say that God himself said, I have inscribed your name in my palm. Do you realize that? Why did he inscribe you in his palm? Now it's a figurative language. When his palm means what? What do you do? You use the palm what? To wash your face? Am I right? That's what it means. So what do you mean by that? It's a nearness of you. That's what he's trying to say. So are you with me? So when he say that I inscribe you in my palm, it means that nearness of you. That means I'm bringing you to bring you. That means he's talking to the nation of Israel that you are far off, but now I brought you near to me. When we talk about the nearness of God, means that we are talking about the presence of God. Are you with me? How many of you understood that? Nearness of God means the presence of God. Where do I get this idea? Deuteronomy chapter 4. Where the nation says the nearness of God was with these people. So are you understand what I'm saying? So inscribing, so what are we saying? When God inscribed you and me, you see, there are 12 tribes, 12 leaders. Each of them carry a different, what? Functionality, aspect of dynamics, and all this inside. Judah doesn't carry the elements of Benjamin. Do you understand that? All of them have different dimensions called destiny. So what I'm trying to say, many times we cannot sustain the presence of God because we doesn't understand who we are. What is our makeup? How did God create? Why? That is very necessary for you and me. That will allow the presence of God becomes sustain you. Because you know who you are, and you know your identity, you know your functions, you know who you are, and what happened. When you are able to move, what happened? The presence of God becomes so real and tangible. Where did he say? He says, "Lo, that I will be with you." When this statement he says, in Matthew chapter 28, in what context he was saying? Is because of the functionality that he's talking about them. What was the functionality? Make disciple of all nations. Did he say that? Are you with me? Where am I coming from? So what I'm trying to say is, a man and woman who knows their makeup, their identity, their functionality, who they are, what happened, that allowed them to sustain the presence of God and allow the presence of God to saturate in your life. Maybe these are new thoughts for you, what I'm trying to do here. But try it out what I'm saying here. Are you with me? So the names are inscribed. Are you with me? Okay, now we'll continue that. But this is another bonus point that I'm giving. Actually, it's not in my notes. Can I do that? Or you don't want that? If you don't want that, okay. If you don't want, I felt the Spirit led me. That's why I'm saying this. Okay, now, what I mean by alignment and positioning in the presence of God. Very interesting. There are two verses that is underlined here. Verse 4 and 7. Can we read that? Okay, never mind. It's time taken. So the word deposit appeared in these two verses. How many of you come across that? The word deposit. In verse 4 and verse 7. What is deposit? Now, it's not what we understand. The word deposit means is a place of rest, to rest, or to pause, to set a rest. So what I'm trying to say, look at me. Unless you and I learn to rest, we will not able to sustain the presence of God. When you become restless, what will happen to you? You will never able to what? In tune with the presence of God. You will disengage the presence of God. You will become engaging other things. What is causing you restless? Are you with me? That's why the Bible says that you are seated in the heavenly places. It's a place of rest. Why? Hebrews chapter 3 says that Jesus have done all this and he's seated. You know, the word seated means is a place of rest, finish work. Are you with me? So when he say that you are seated in heavenly places, it means a place where the finished work is done. So you are basically relying upon the redemptive work and the work that has done, finished, and then you are resting upon that. How many of you are actually resting like that? What I'm saying is actually you need to juggle with it. You need to go back and ponder this. So the word place of rest. That's why you read in Hebrews chapter 4, the Hebrew writers say that the Israelites supposed to enter the rest. What's the rest? It's the promised land. What is the promised land? The rest, the promised land is the person of Jesus Christ. That's a shadow. Are you getting what I'm saying? Or it's just passed by your mind? Is it heavy stuff? Ponder over what I'm saying. So what are we saying? So when God says deposit them, that means he says, I want you to bring all the 12 tribe leaders' rod, deposit them. That means bring them to a position where they can rest, pause. How many of you know, you and I must learn to rest. And that's why Jesus says in Matthew chapter 11 verse 28, those who are heavy and laden, come unto me, I will give you rest for your soul. Did he say that? A rest inside your soul. When you become restless, you will never able to engage the tangible presence of God. And you will disengage, and what happens? You will start to engage things which is the earthly realm. So rest is a place. How many of you know Jesus was resting? Jesus was the rest itself. Do you understand? The entire life of Jesus, you see, he learned to rest in the Father. A place that he's learned to rest. So what are we seeing here? Here, Moses was instructed by God, says, I want you to deposit them. Before where? Before the tent of the testimony. What's the tent of testimony? It's the place where the ark was there. So before the presence. Now, it's a skill that you and I need to learn to rest. Rest is basically laying hold, relying upon the promises and the redemptive purpose and the power of the redemptive. That will give you rest. When you learn to rest upon that, what happens? The presence of God becomes so real. So real that you will be what? Able to enjoy, celebrate, and saturate it. I mean, we getting what I'm saying? Now, maybe you ask me a question, how can you say that? Now, let me tell you something. In Genesis chapter 2, verse 15, it says God put man in where? In the Garden of Eden. The word put means deposit. The same word. So garden is a place of rest. How many of you understood that? Garden was a place of rest. Do you realize that Adam was really engaging, Eve was really engaging the presence of God in the Garden of Eden? It was not a promise for them, it was a reality for them. The Bible says the cool of the day, what? God walks into the garden. And I mean they can able to enjoy Him, celebrate Him, encounter Him. And that's what's supposed to be. That's what's supposed to be. Out of that they're supposed to what? Domain and subdue the earth. Are you with me? So the garden was a place where rest. They was resting, and how? In order to rest so that they can, as they rest, they will learn to engage the presence of God. So you understand? So that's the Hebrew words was saying that. The same Hebrew words was used in Numbers chapter 17, verse 4, and verse 7, and Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. God placed put in the Eden. So Edens signify the tangible presence of God. Why do I say that? If we go to read the Hebrew words for that, it means a spot where heaven is invaded there. You understand that? That's what Eden is all about. A spot where heaven is so real. That's where God walks. You understand that? It's become a place where heaven is so real there. That means what I'm saying, that means they are sustaining the presence. How are they sustaining the presence? When they learn to rest. But enemy wants them to kick out of the rest. Do you realize that? When they was kicked out of the Garden of Eden, what happened? They was lost the what? The sustaining of the what? Tangible presence of God. Are you with me? Are you following what I'm saying? You understand? So it's a skill that you and I have to do. So how do I develop rest? Again I say, cling on to the graphe, the word. Redemptive. Based on that, you can actually rest. Everything surrounding you can be about turmoil, shaking, but inside you are rest. That's where you learn to what? Navigate, sustaining the presence of God in the midst of darkness. That's why he says, arise and shine, your light has come, and the glory of God risen upon you. It's upon. So it's a place of rest. Are you with me? So the promised land is supposed to be the place of rest. Okay, now let me develop this. So in order for me to have rest, I said you need to understand the redemptive dynamics and the promises of God and the nature of God. Based on that, you find rest. in midst of perplexity, you can walk through a valley, but you know that what? You are holding on to the promise that will give you a rest, and in the midst of the rest, you can experience the tangible presence of God. And that will allow you to sustain the presence of God. How many of you know when you walk in the valley, that's a place that you and I will always tend to what? Lost the sustaining or sustain the presence of God. Are you with me? Following what I'm saying? So what I mean by pause here, he also says pause. Pause means stillness. You see, what is happening right now in the church? We lost the dynamic of stillness. If you went to a century years ago, those, maybe I'm talking about 4th century, 5th century, 6th century, they're called desert fathers. These desert fathers learned silence and stillness. That you and I need to learn. Because we are living a place where no silence. How many of you know that? There's no stillness. Everything is moving. So here is the positioning of yourself. If you learn to cultivate stillness in your life, that's why Jesus learned stillness. Do you know that? Early in the morning, you wake up to search your Father. He was all night with the Father. He was learning to be still where he can able to what? Sustain the presence. That's why daily he is able to what? Sustain the presence of God. Now look at me. He's God, but I'm talking in another dimension of human. He's teaching us how. But stillness, that is where God becomes so real. Are you with me? So stillness is something that you and I need to learn. Okay, I've done that. So what are we seeing here? A place where positioning yourself. Where do I learn to be rest? What I do? Stillness. All these are elements that allow me what? To what? Sustain the presence of God. Are you with me? Okay, now, as we are reading this passage, what are we seeing here? All of the 12 of them, rod was placed. Only one was what? Blossom, sprung. Only one. My question is, all of the 12 was placed in the what? Tent of the meeting. Before the ark, where the glory comes. Why the rest 11 miss it? Have you asked this question? Very interesting. You need to learn when you read the Bible, you need to ask, why the rest 11 lost? Is it God reject them? Cannot be. Because God is biased if not. God is unfair. Because why? Allowing one rod to be what? Blossom, and the rest of them what? Look at me, the way that I'm asking questions that I want to learn why. Do you want to know why? Do you want to know? Do you want to know? The one means okay, I'll leave it here. Now, whose rod was blossom? Aaron. Aaron came from the tribe of Levites. Levi. So Levites. So what it means? Now as I say, is Jacob's son. Correct? Came from the first 5. Where they named the child. So what it mean by that? So when they name the child, what is the significant name behind? Let me draw some thoughts for you from that. It means attachment. Attach. The word Levites mean, Levite, attach. So what I'm seeing here. So what I stated here. A tribe, a person's learn to attach with God. The rest of the 12 are not. You can come to the presence of God, but if you are not attached to God, you are not able to sustain the presence of God. So the word Levi means attach. Attach to who? To him. Are you with me? That means a prophetic names, an imagery was given to this child, that this child will grow into a place where they will learn to attach. That's why the entire Leviticus tribes was set apart for God. Do you know that? Only one tribe was set apart. And they are supposed to set apart for God, and they was attached to God. So why Aaron came from that tribes. So what are we seeing here? In order for me and you to sustain the present, then you and I learn to detach from the world and learn to attach to the Lord. Very hard, Pastor. It's very hard. Because I'm going to work all this. Yeah, Jesus says, Jesus didn't say, Father, take them from the world. They are in the world. Preserve them. In John chapter 17, we read that. How many of you read that? So it's an attachment. So in order for me to become attached to the Lord, then I need to detach certain things that is what? Not attaching Him. Are you with me? So here I'm seeing a principle here through the name of what? The tribe called Leviticus, Levite. So from there I can extract a principle that means you and I learn to attach to the Lord by detaching from the world, from the flesh. That is what? Where you are. Can draw. When the attachment comes, what? The what? Present becomes sustained in your life. So that's what I'm saying here. How many of you seeing that? The question that you and I need to ask, what are the things that I need to detach? How do I attach to Him? Are you with me? How many of you getting what I'm saying? Now, let me build on the word. Right, it also means to join. The Bible says those who join with the Lord, they become one. Am I right? In the New Testament? Join with the Lord, become one. It's a joining with the Lord. How many of you know it's a principle of marriage? Holy matrimony. Where it says, so and so is coming together, holy matrimony, to join themselves. Am I right? We say that statement? That means they are living in separate. Now they become living together and they become one. So that's a life of journey that you and I are supposed to build, where you become one with the Lord, walking together with Him. Now another word means is what in the word is walking together. How can I walk together? The Bible says in the Old Testament, it says if two agree will walk together. That's the statement says that. Micah. It says two agree when they are walk together. So if I say that I'm walking together means I'm agreeing with His will, I'm agreeing with His thoughts, I'm agreeing with His principles, I'm agreeing with His nature. Are you with me? If that's what I does, what it allowed me to sustain the presence of God. You see, many times we disagree with God, walking in disagreement with His principle, with His nature, with His thought, with His will, then we lost the sustaining of the presence of God. Are you with me? How many of you getting what I'm saying? So when I say attach means what? I put it in posturing your heart. Where your heart is postured towards attachment, joiners, walking together. Where you think, what are the areas that I'm disagreeing with God? What are the thoughts that disagreeing? What are the feelings that disagreeing with Him? Then I was detaching them so that I can agree with Him. As I agree with Him, what? The nearness of God and the what? Sustaining the presence of God becomes so real. Are you with me? You understand where I'm coming from? So I'm going back to the name, pick it up, what is the Hebrew meaning behind that, and drawing the principle here for you and me to extract this principle so that we can sustain and what? saturated by the presence of God. Are you with me? So what are we seeing here? So what in the New Testament, Jesus himself says, if you abide in me, I'll abide in you. And my word what? Abide in you. Ask, you shall receive. Again, the New Testament context is again an attachment. Are you with me? Why this branch become alive? Because there's an attachment there. The rest of the branch was walking in deadness. You and I can walk in deadness in our Christian walk, barrenness in a Christian walk, barrenness in every aspect of life, deadness in every aspect of life, because you are not living a what? An attachment to his life. That's why Jesus says in John chapter 15, I'm the vine, you're the branch. If you remain in me, you will bear fruit. Did he say that? That means there's a promise. There's a flow of life. And there's a fruit is coming out of this branch. It's because life was invaded, infused into this branch. What make it? Because of attachment. Are you with me? How many of you getting what I'm saying? Are you following the thoughts? What I mean by that, not an attachment, that means he become the life source. That means you're coming to a place dependent on him. Say, God, you are the life source of my life. You're the source of every aspect of my life. And this is what I am. This is what I believe. This is what I'm going to live upon. This is what I want to lay upon. This is what I want to lean upon. I want to live. And that's where what? The presence of God becomes so real. You sustain the presence. When you become independent from the Lord, you lost the presence. Adam chose to be independent. Do you understand that? And that's why he was kicked out of that. So what is rebellion is all about? Chapter 16, we saw rebellion, right? What is rebellion means? Not wants to be dependent. If the children rebel with the parents, what they're saying? They are not going to dependent on the parents. Are you with me? So rebellion is a spirit, is actually announcing, accepting the independent spirit. Are you with me? Are you getting what I'm saying? So this is real. This is real. If you have an independent spirit, then that shows that you will never be a what? Sustain the presence of God. You and I are not created not to be independent, dependent. Are you with me? So you need to check your life. Am I walking like that? So if you are walking in this principle, the presence of God becomes so real. The tangible presence becomes so real. You will able to what? Facilitate the presence of God. Are you with me? Is it enough for you? One more thought. One more A. Assignment. What I mean by assignment. Remember, the rod of Aaron was actually blossoming. That means God validate the call of this man. What was his call? High priest. Assignment. You understand? And God was prophetically saying that Aaron will faithful, loyal to the assignment and call, and because of this, he will be fruitful. That's why it's a blossom. Are you with me? I'm even getting what I'm saying. So what is your how do I bring it to relevant to right now? You and I are called to be a priest. That is what your function. That's what your design, and that's what your identity. How many of you understand what I'm saying? So what I put here, when I say assignment means purpose driven. I've been driven by the purpose that God has placed in my life. What is my purpose driven? I am the priest. That's why in 1 Peter chapter 2 says that you are the priest. What priest does? So that was Aaron does. What was Aaron does? He was a mediator for the nation of Israel before God. He bring both realm together. A mediator is supposed to bring both together, right? Am I right? So if you say you go to court, when you are filing for divorce, before the divorce, there's a mediator who will come in. What's the purpose of the mediator? Bringing them to reconciliations. Bringing them to a place where amicably they were able to settle the matter. Am I right? That's what mediator does. So here, Aaron was a high priest. He was a mediator for the nation of Israel to God. So what is that? He is a mediator to the earth and heaven. Am I right? When you understand you are a priest, then you are the mediator for heaven and earth to connect. You and I are the bridge. If you understood that and you walk in the revelation, what happens? You are able to sustain the presence of God. Many of you don't understand that. You are in the working place as a what? Mediator of heaven. That means heaven's supposed to walk through your life. Heaven, you are the gate of heaven. That's why what? In Genesis chapter 28 he says. How many of you understood that? So what are we seeing here? God was prophetically saying that I chosen this man because I know this in future this man will walk into this assignment faithfully and finish the assignment as a high priest. That's what Aaron does. That means God was relying upon him. God has confidence over him and say this man will carry out. Well, God has confidence upon you and me. Are you with me? So this is where the presence of God becomes so real. So what he does, what is actually the priestly job? That means you become a what? A carrier of the spirit of prayer. How many of you understood the carrier of spirit of prayer? You understand what I'm saying? Because Aaron's supposed to be. Everything he does is what? A spirit of prayer that is attached to his life. Am I right to say? So he faithfully carried out assignment as a high priest. Now remember, as he was a high priest, it's a shadow of Jesus of a high priest. How many of you know Jesus was a mediator for you and me? To the Father and you and me. And he is a mediator to heaven and earth. You and I access heaven is because of him. Am I right? He's still interceding for you as a high priest. Not only in the earth, he's also in the heaven. So what are we seeing here? So you and I called to be priests. That means interceding is something that is where you are supposed to be involved in the function of intercession. Intensify intercessions. Carry the spirit of prayer. That means you are fulfilling your assignments and what? You are purpose driven. That's allowed you what? To sustain the presence of God. You see, many times we deviate from our call. How do we deviate a call? Not full-heartedly. We don't serve full-heartedly of our function and call. I'm called to do, I'm doing. I'm told to do, I'm doing. And your heart is not connected with that. And that shows that what? You cannot sustain the presence of God. God will allow the sustaining presence of Him when you learn to walk in the purpose driven upon the assignment of God. That's why I say, lo, that I will be with you. When he say that in Matthew chapter 28, he's talking about the design assignment that was placed in the apostles and not only upon you and me. So what are we seeing here? So it's the role of a what? Coming to a place where you become mediator, bringing two realms together. Consciously, continuously, consistently you're working with that area. And that's where the tangible presence, and that's a what? Sustain the presence of God. And God knows that this man will do that. Are you with me? Are you following what I'm saying? So that's what I'm saying here. Purpose driven. Driven by the call of God. How many of you know Jesus was driven by the call of God? You say, my food is what? Is to do, the one who sent to do his will and finish. Not only do and finish. He never say do only. He say finish. In the cross he says, my God, why have you forsaken me? He's talking about the presence of God left him. That means all the while the presence of God must become real. I and the Father are one. He says the statement so many times in the book of John. That's provoked the Pharisees. And the Sadducees, they say, how come we can make him equality with God? He says, we are one. I'm the Father, the Father is in me. We are working together. How this bold statement comes out of Jesus' mouth? They mean that he's actually learning to sustain the presence of God, saturated by the presence of God, realizing the presence of God is so real with him. You hear his prayer. He says, Father, I know you heard my prayer. Wow, that's a very bold statement. When the last time you say the Father, you hear the prayer? When you after praying, you prayer is not delayed, answer delayed, you say whether God is answering my prayer. I don't know whether I prayed. But Jesus was so bold to say. What makes him to say? Because he was in the place of his assignment. Now look at me. I'm just going through the Word of God. I'm not picking up from anywhere else. I just walk along with this. I research, study this, and I'm coming out this principle where the Holy Spirit is showing me. When you learn to faithful and consistent, purpose-driven in the line with that, you will be able to sustain the presence of God. Are you with me?